guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is a very special video. This is like a series that is happening on my channel, and this is would I repurchase these palettes if it was today that they are launching. I am very excited to give you some other options if I'm not interested with it, or else if I'm like still head over heels over these palettes. So if you're ready, let's begin. So let me first start off with the palettes, which with no doubt, it's an absolute yes for me. If it launches today, yes, I'm going to repurchase this. And this is from Anastasia Beverly Hills, and this is the Jackie Aina palette. And this is still like one of my favorite palettes that Anastasia has come out with. I love the color story. I love still playing with this. This is definitely one of my favorite fall palettes that I have in my collection. I actually have this red shade on my lower lash line today and this credit shade on my outer corners, if you can see that. I really love the way everything turned out. I absolutely love it. I do have like a little bit of trust issues on my inner corners too. And that's my look, guys. I really love this. The color story from like the variety of looks that you can create out of this palette, it's absolutely gorgeous. I absolutely love this red shade, which I applied on my lower lash line. I love this shade, which is a big wig. Like purple to be done right is that way. I love this shade, which is edges. Let me just swatch a few shades for you so that you can see how creamy and blendable these shades are even today. Like, look at that. Yes, without a doubt, an absolute yes, I would say, to Anastasia and Jackie Aina palette. Yes, if it was launching today, a 100% yes. Okay, now let's talk about a palette from Colourpop, and this is their Star Wars and Mandalorian palette. Now, this was all the hype back in the days, and there's nothing wrong with this palette at all. The only thing is that I'm not a big green person. So for that reason, I would not purchase this if it was today. If I'm looking for like a pastel palette, I want a whole lot more colors than like some minty greens. I know that this is like a minty palette, and if you are a green lover, you might absolutely love it. But for me, if I'm looking for a pastel palette, I will turn down on this, and instead I would go with this Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette, because if this was released like even now, I would be like super interested in this. And this is the Mercury Retrograde palette. Now, of course, you can find this on sale for $33, but generally Huda Beauty palettes are like $67, and I would 1,000,000% say yes to this. If I have to recommend like one pastel palette, which can be wearable on like several different skin tones, I would say yes to this for sure. Okay, now let's talk about a palette from Too Faced. I don't think you can find this anymore. This is the Chocolate Gold palette, and this is how the color story is. I really love the shimmers in this palette. I really do. Like, I get super excited even today when I have to like dip into this palette. But there are like 4 mattes in this palette, which are these. If it was me today, I would actually swap a few shimmers out of this palette out and put some like colorful like jewel tone mattes in this palette. If it was me today, out of the Too Faced palettes that I have in my collection, if I'm looking for like a colorful palette and like with beautiful shimmers, I would instead go with this. And this is the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. Like, you can see the difference. Like, both of them are colorful, both of them have really good shimmers. But if I have to like choose one over the other, I would highly recommend the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette and not the Chocolate Gold palette. That's just me, but both the palettes are really good. I really love the tin packaging of the Too Faced palettes rather than any other palettes that they have in their collection. So I would say yes to this and no to this. Okay, now let's talk about a few neutral palettes in the collection, and I have to talk about like 3 palettes together. So one would be Artist Couture's Supreme Nudes palette. Again, a very nice palette. I used to use this like all the time, and I can get some like beautiful looks out of this palette. I really like that one point of time. The second palette that I'm going to talk about is Going Coconuts, which is more of like a neutral, cool tone color story, I would say. And this on my skin tone, I would say it's a very subtle palette. So you can see the difference. This is definitely a little more warm tone. This is definitely a little more like cooler tone neutral palette. And the third palette that I want to talk about is the Sigma Ambience palette, which is more like neutral, warm tone, cool tone with like glimmery, shimmery shades all encompassed in it. If I have to talk about the quality, I would say yes to Sigma palette any day, anyhow, I would say. Out of the three palettes that I talked about, this definitely has the top-notch quality that I am looking for any neutral palette, I would say. Talking about that, I don't think any of these are like bad by any means, but if it was me today and I have to choose among these three palettes, I would choose the Ambience palette and say no to the other two. That's just me. I'm so sorry. I really love all these palettes, but out of the three, yes, for sure to Ambience. Yeah. No doubts about it. Okay, now let's talk about It's Belle Cosmetics Break the Rules palette. Now this palette is like full of like beautiful iridescent shimmers. Is it multi-chromes? No. Is it duochromes? Yes. I would say this is a duochrome, this is a duochrome, this is a duochrome, this is a beautiful like a pink to an orange shifting shade. There are some beautiful shimmery shades. Without a blink of an eye, I would say yes to this any day. Like any day, even though like they're not like full on duochrome, multi-chrome shades, and not everyone is looking for those shifting shades all over but if you're looking for like sparkly shades, this palette is like under $30 and I would highly recommend this. This is I think like $27 or $28. You can use my code SMITHYSONY for additional 10% off on top of that. I'll link it in the description box below for you guys. But this is a beautiful, beautiful palette. The formula is absolutely outstanding. They have some toppery shades. They have some like opaque shades. Like I have to swatch a few for you guys to understand. Like these are such beautiful shades. Look at that. Look at that. Do you need any other shimmers in your life? And look at the duochromy effect and look the way it shines. Oh my God, yes, 1,000,000%, like 1,000,000%. I absolutely would recommend this to anybody. Like if you're a starter of makeup, if you're a professional in makeup, you need to have these shimmers. If you like some glittery shimmery eyeshadows without it being like rough or chunky or like coarse, these are some smoothest shimmers in my collection and with such beautiful impact. I would definitely recommend this. Like you need to try It's Belle Cosmetics if you've not tried it already because you are definitely missing out on it. Okay, now let's talk about a few pink shadows in my collection. I am first going to talk about MAC's palette, and this is called Nude Model Palette. This is from the MAC Art Library. And oh my God. Can you see a little more of a boring palette in my collection? I don't think so. Like, I think this is the most boring palette that I have in my collection. The shadows are really good. Like, they perform really good. But as soon as I open this and I look at less of the palettes that I have in my collection, I immediately shut this off. Like, because why? There's no interesting shades in that palette. There is nothing that catches my attention. Yeah. But if you're looking for a pink palette, I would highly recommend this Lauralee Los Angeles Nude 2 palette. Again, this is a neutral palette, but with like beautiful shimmers thrown in there. And I won't even say like this is a pink palette. You can definitely go more neutral. You can definitely go mauve-y. These two, like the toppery shades, kiss-worthy. Such beautiful palette. The formula is absolutely outstanding. I would definitely recommend like Lauralee Los Angeles to come out with more of these size eyeshadow palettes because they absolutely killed it out of the park. So I would say yes to this and no to this for sure. Okay, now let's talk about another Anastasia palette, and this is the Amrezy palette. It's been discontinued, so you cannot find it anymore. I'm a big fan of Anastasia formulas, like I really am. This is definitely more on like a bigger size palette as compared to their regular palette. So let me show you a comparison with the Jackie Aina palette that we talked about. So this is the size difference. You can see that they have like In the Amrezy palette, they have like 2 more shades as compared to the Jackie Aina palette. So Jackie Aina palette comes with 14 shades. Yes, 14 shades. And this comes with 16 shades. The only thing that I do not like about this palette is these 2 glitters, out of which 1 glitter I'm wearing on my eyes today. I'm wearing the shade Gemini on my eyes. If you can see anything glittery, shimmery on the lid, that's basically the shade Gemini. I love the neutral tones that she's put. I love the shade Barb in the palette. I love Cupcake. I love the shade Dragon, which is more of like that coppery gold tone. And I love the shade Georgina. The shades that I'm not a big fan of is Reezy, Litty, Leo, and Gemini. Yeah, it takes me quite a bit to dip into those shades. So I would say, like, out of this whole palette, there are 4 or 5 shades that I'm not a big fan of. If I think more about it, I really like this palette. I really do. But I could have avoided those shades. Like, if it was me, I could have avoided that shade. But am I ready to let go of this? No, not really. So I would still purchase this because the shades that are really good are really good. Like those tones of browns that you see like very similar to each other, they're not similar at all. Like they have like undertone difference. These are some like neutral browns. This is more of a like a purpley brown shade. I still can use all of this on my eyes because the quality is really good, but I could have avoided those pressed glitters for sure. Like, yeah, I don't wear these glittery eyes outside. Like I really don't. But for videos, yes, I can rock that look. Okay, now let's talk about a few jewel tone palettes. Okay, who remembers this Colourpop palette? Gather Round Sisters palette, the Hocus Pocus palette. You guys remember this? Oh my god, people were going bananas. They were fighting with each other to purchase this palette because nobody could apparently get the hands on this. And yeah, I get this. It's a jewel tone palette. It's really something. But if it was me, yeah, I would not buy this. I really would not buy this. And this was around like $22. I would say it was around that price range. But if it is me today, I can find this Melt Cosmetics Amori Mariposa palette for $28 right now if you go to their website. Original price $70. Would not recommend this for $70 for sure. But if you're looking for those beautiful jewel tone shades, I would highly recommend this for $28. I would say run, go get it for $28. This is an amazing palette to have in the collection. I absolutely love everything about it except these 2 shades. Like these 2 shades are like my skin tone shades. I don't need like 2 shades that look very similar on my skin tone on this palette, but otherwise I would have swapped those 2 shades and put more shimmers into it because this palette only has 4 shimmers. No, this palette has 6 shimmers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shimmers. Yeah, I still would have added a few more shimmers in this palette, but if it was me today, yes, for sure, for this, for $28, yes, go run buy it. But no for this, for sure. I stood in the line like early in the morning when my Ulta was like releasing this in the store. I stood in the line for like about 40 minutes so that I could get this palette. If it was me today, yeah, not worth it. I get the hype, but quality of the eyeshadows that is what we are looking about. And that Colourpop palette is a like Fallout Mess City. Okay, the last eyeshadow palette that I have to talk about is this Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette, which is the Celestial Odyssey palette, which came last holiday season. And this palette is definitely a concise color story of what Pat McGrath is all about, which is mostly rosy tones and like bronzy tones, I would say. So if you were interested in testing out Pat McGrath eyeshadows, I would say definitely wait for their holiday palettes. Now again, you're not getting those Blitz Astral formulas, but guys, you don't need those Blitz Astral formulas. You don't need to buy that $125 for the Blitz Astral formulas. You can definitely get those tones from the indie makeup brands. Trust me on that. Once you get into the indie makeup, it's very difficult to get out of it because they're so good. I do have Pat McGrath's $125 palette. But I would say if you're dying to test out Pat McGrath palettes, this is the way to go. Go for the holiday palettes and then wait for a sale to happen because All of these holiday palettes go on a sale. These palettes are not cheap by any means at the full retail price. This is around like $75, I would say, if I'm not mistaken, $75, $78. But it's better than $125 and you're getting more shades. And all these shades are beautiful. It is definitely a good mix of like shimmers and mattes all encompassed in it. And Pat McGrath, you don't need a lot of mattes from Pat McGrath, but I would have definitely loved one more jewel tone matte, like a teal shade or something, instead of these two pinks together. I've talked about it a few times on this channel whenever I'm using this palette, but all the shades are really blendable, really beautiful. So I would say yes to this. I would still buy her holiday palettes if the color story really speaks out to me, because the formula is absolutely beautiful. So I would say yes to this, but I would say definitely wait for a sale price. You can get like these palettes for $40, $45 after a sale price. So definitely wait for that, because she does a lot of sales throughout the year. Do not pay full prices for that. If you can get it for a sale price, if you can wait for like a few more months, then why not? That's what I would say. But that's all that I have for today. These were the palettes that I wanted to talk about for this season. Let me know if you do feel a little different other than me, if you would choose one over the other or not. Do leave it down in the comment section below. And if you did like this video, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.